It's cool. What's up, Sam?
Yeah, well, it's big day. Yeah, big day.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
tell me
my
what's.
second day of my 5th decade.
Wow.
So
Wait, fifth decade? I thought
it's
you
hard
said
to
41st.
imagine, man. Yeah, I finished 40 years, so I'm starting my 5th decade.
Oh, right. You're starting.
Yeah,
Yes. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
wow. How was so you had your first class yesterday at the start of the semester?
I enjoyed myself. Um, I enjoyed it more when students came up and I could just kind of banter and have fun. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a really heavy topic because we were talking about oud, the the cologne, the fragrance, and that
The,
many people around the world wear it, but it's really popular in the Arab world, and particularly among Arab men.
mm-hmm.
Um,
What
I
is
should have been
exactly?
more clear about that, but uh, I'll
You
hear
should.
back from Arab women saying like, "Hey, we wear that too," but or other
I,
people, But whatever. I just know
yeah.
that it's so common.
I feel a little
And
out of the loop. So what exactly, so you said fragrance. So you were talking about fragrance, like, yeah, fragrances from where and
yeah, it's from the
mm,
Amaryllia tree, which is really in Southeast Asia. So Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
Pretty common. It's just this. You know this. I know the fragrance. If you've been anywhere near uh, Aquilaria tree, if you've been anywhere near Arabs at an event, like a wedding or like Arab students when they have a gathering,
Yep. It's
like
funny actually. Do you remember Salman a while back? He was a part of
yeah,
World in
yeah,
Conversation.
yeah,
I know he always had amazing fragrances on. I think they were
yeah,
um you said they were Arabian fragrances?
yeah. Well,
Where were the
I think
fragrances
just
from again?
in the Arab world, and not just in Islam, right? But in the Arab world, fragrance it's very important. So many places, right? In India, I mean, it just is elevated in importance in some places, right? But certainly in India and the Arab world.
One sec.
Yeah, so it's cool. I really like it,
I
and I
think
love
my
going
audio
into
is cutting
these.
out. One sec.
Yeah, I love going into these shops and souks where they put together these these fragrances. Somebody will mix one for you, and yeah, it's just really nice. Anyway, I just did a kind of a light thing on the first day. We don't want to dig too heavy, and we want people to really want to volunteer. So I don't want to
Mhm, mhm.
dive head first
So
into something that's sensitive.
right,
Yeah.
right. My bad. My the audio cut out with my Beats headphones, so I couldn't hear you for like the first
Mm-hmm.
20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what was the theme? So the topic was about fragrances, but what were you trying to get at? Like what was your point that you were trying to get to?
Yeah, actually a really good question. Um, uh, I think. Hang on, I'm like trying to. Hey Jeff, pull up. Just look up, uh, like perfume and souk, SOUQ,
And can you say
and you'll
where
find
these
a couple
fragrances
really
are
cool photos.
and
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
missed a few
here, let
things
me go
from
back to your first question.
okay.
Um,
Well, really quick, Sam.
I think
Can,
what's
Can you just say who you're saying is wearing these fragrances and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah,
these fragrances are from?
yeah.
Just
Okay, so
okay.
listen. Um, it's one particular fragrance, right? And that's really pungent and very powerful and very expensive. Uh, and it's called oud in Arabic, OUD.
Oh,
And
you do.
it's very here's a guy right here. We'll get in trouble for using that, but it's just like that, man. You go into these shops and they'll just hook you up with your own unique fragrance and stuff. It's really cool. I have a lot of different bottles of this in my closet. Um, it's just really part of a culture in such a profound way, in a really cool way.
Right.
And I think my purpose in starting there is building these bridges between cultures and how important that is to be able to do that, and why it is I think that people need that, and how people, what I'm trying to do in this class is to introduce people to from one culture, to different parts of another culture, and try to break down some of the, maybe just, it's like, I'm not going to say fears, whatever it is that keeps people from asking questions. So for example, if you're around,
Yeah.
if I'm here in the US, right, and I'm not Arab at all, and I'm around these Arab men and they wear this a lot, and maybe if you're a student and you watch the class, or you have a roommate or somebody on your dorm hall or something, you just go start a conversation, just break it down and engage in the conversation. And I think that is such a big part of what this class is, and my attention always is to introduce people, give people enough of an introduction to other people, other cultures, other ways of living, that they are comfortable engaging with people once they step out into their lives. And so, sometimes it's a very simple stuff, right? Human beings around the world, we're not very different at all. And, we come to think that there are these great differences. And then on top of that, we have this minor problem, which has really kind of become a major problem. And that is that there are these random situations in which people are offended by being asked questions about certain things,
Right.
or have been engaged about certain things, right? So it would be like somewhere somebody is, if someone asks them, hey, what's that fragrance that you're wearing? Somewhere someone is offended by that, right? Like somewhere, I don't know, like who, just some lunatic, right? I mean, people are mentally ill, right? I don't know, right? Okay, so
ask why you think, why are they offended? Like, what do you think?
Who knows? I have no idea, but they are, right? This is the thing, right? Like, so somebody is. Well, when you read a story like that of someone being offended, who's being approached in some way, right? Like, hey, let me ask you a question about this or a question about that. And all you need is to read a few of those stories. And it's enough to kind of put people into a place of silence. And because, you don't want to be the person that offends someone, unless you're like me and you're sort of a low-level sociopath and it doesn't really matter. Or truthfully, with somebody like me, I actually have a really good idea of all these lines of offense. And so I really, when I'm stepping in these kinds of territories, I know where I'm stepping. And but in any case, so because we read about a couple of really extreme examples, and then we just shut up, right? Like, I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to get in trouble, or I just don't want to be whatever it is. And since I don't know, like, can I even ask you? Like, here, you're a person from another culture. You're clearly. Can I even ask you about the scarf that you're wearing, or the dress you're wearing, or the perfume that you have, or and again, all you need are just a few examples of people just kind of blowing up for some reason, right? And it's very silencing. And so I use my class as a way to show that, listen, the vast majority of people are inside the box on these things, and I'd be very happy to talk about and to share with, and that kind of thing, different things, right? So anyway, that's the purpose of yesterday's class.
Yeah. And so, like, I guess to get more into it, how are you using fragrances to break down the idea of, like, how are you using fragrances to break down
It wasn't.
what's
Yeah, it
taboo,
wasn't.
or
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. So I take the oud, which is really popular, and I know it's popular among Arabs. So I bring an Arab guy up, right? An Arab man. And then two people who are not Arab, who I know probably don't know anything about this. Well, I took a risk. I know most people don't, if you're not, So
right.
It's really just having the conversation. Okay. First off, showing that I know something about it, which means like, hey, anybody can know about it. You don't have to be You don't have to be in the culture to know something about this, right? So that, first off, that just demonstrates it's like, hey, wait, this is information that I can obtain, right? And this is kind of an interesting conversation, listening to this man. His name was Ibrahim, the student. Talk about, someone, this guy, he was a student from South Korea, D. People call him D or Dean. And he, just asked this really beautiful question, which was just like, hey, what's your first memory of this? Or maybe it was Luke, the American guy. What's your first memory of this? Or what's when you smell it, what comes to mind? And Ibrahim's answer was my grandfather. Well, yeah, what that does is that humanizes, right? And so now there are lots of Arab students in the class, probably like 40 or 50 or so, right? Probably at least 40. Well, you see people in class like that. You've heard from this Ibrahim guy. He said something about his grandfather, right? And like that it's just about breaking the walls, because I want people in that class. I want them to see each other outside of class, or it's in the hallway or whatever it is, right? And people will see him somewhere. People really remember. They'll remember his face, and they'll see him somewhere on another part of campus or downtown. They'll be like, "Wait, you're the guy with the perfume in Social 19, the cologne." And they'll be like, "Yeah, okay, I've done my job. I've done my job."
The immediate like humanization through, he's like, wow, I have the memory of my grandfather, and he immediately
Everybody has a
wanted
grandfather.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, not everybody has a grandfather,
Well,
but most people
relative.
do, and most people have at least had a grandfather. At some point, everybody had a grandfather, or we wouldn't be here. None of us, right? Yeah. So that's like really.
So was that the majority of the class? Were they up the whole entire
No.
time?
It was like 25 minutes or so. 20 minutes.
So,
But then I had fun with it, right? Like you got to laugh. So we have to have fun, and I have to make it kind of light, and we have to be able to laugh, and that's important. Students on the first day, they got to see us laughing with each other about different things, So like I made a joke about, I asked Ibrahim if he is there anything he'd like to just say about Kuwaiti culture? He's from Kuwait. And I've been to Kuwait, I could say different things. And he said, yeah, I just feel really honored and proud that I'm here. Like my government pays for me to be here. And like, and I feel like I just feel really honored. Like I feel, so he said that. And I said, listen, man, Ibrahim, your government isn't, there's somebody else who's paying for you to be here. It's all these people out here when they buy oil, right, from your government, right? So that's just making a joke. And then it was very funny, and people laughed, and like, but the point is, it's the lightness, right? It's the lightness. And we come into a class about race, ethnicity, and culture. We're going to hit really heavy issues, and it's going to be, people are going to be like be on edge at some level when we get to those really intense discussions, or they seem like they would be intense, but maybe they're not really intense. Well, they're not, because I don't make them. I allow us to have them without being intense. So, you need a certain. I want to demonstrate a certain lightness about the issues, right? So that even just having fun, because in the end, it does, whatever the issue is, like they're like we're in this together, and so let's go.
Yeah, and so what issue like where you see like what made this, so you're saying that it was important because you want people to feel, you don't want people to feel taboo when they're going to ask someone that they don't know too much about their culture. You don't want them to feel, like they can't ask questions, and so
Exactly.
what issue, because you're usually addressing an issue like every class.
Every class.
A problem
But
that you're seeing. And
yeah.
so how much of it, how much of class were you continuing to, I guess, press that issue, or
that just a little bit? It's just was at the end. It's just one piece of it. So, I had to introduce the class yesterday and kind of what we're doing and that kind of thing. But, the thing is, what happened was last weekend, I Lori doesn't like oud, this cologne. She's just really not. She's not a fan of it. It's
Really?
too pungent for her. Yeah, for whatever. She has a very, very sensitive nose, just like
Uh-huh.
her mother, by the way. Which means that I can't buy perfume for her at all ever, because I'll never get it right. Like, there's going to be something very specific that she likes, and
Mhm.
she mostly doesn't wear perfume. Although we did get some recently, but
Uh-huh.
uh,
What was it not
and
as pungent? It was
yeah, we got it in Korea, and everything in Korea is just, it's just like, I don't know,
just
it's
light?
Korean, yeah. It's super fragrant and super, I can't even put words to it, but it's 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 delicate and it's
Mm.
divine, man.
Mm.
It's divine. Yeah,
Divine.
it's really, yeah. So that's not the
It's
name of it. That's just
interesting.
how I would call it. So in any
Right,
case,
right.
the Saturday night, I went out somewhere, and Lori, it wasn't home. She was traveling, and I just put
Mhm.
some on and said, "Oh man!" And I, put it on and put it on my neck and stuff, right? And I like it,
I can finally wear it is what
Yeah,
you
I can finally wear it. Lori's out of the house, and then I said, "Oh wait, I should do this in class. Let me take this in class," because one of my Arab students uh, taught me how to put it on.
how do
On the
you
wrists, and then rub the wrists together, and then put the wrists on your neck, and maybe on your clothes, that kind of thing.
interesting.
So I thought, that's pretty cool, man. All right,
Yeah.
let's do that. Let's teach you.
Did you go over was that a part of the learning? Did
Yeah, yeah,
anybody
yeah,
go
yeah.
over like how you put on the fragrance in that
Yeah,
class?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Ibrahim showed the other two guys how to put it on. Yeah.
Wow. Was there any
Yeah. So,
did you talk was there talk about so you said there was an American student and a Korean student?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Did they
yeah.
start to trade their differences on like cologne or fragrances and
Uh,
from their side of the story, or was it
yeah.
mostly just focused on Arabic fragrances?
No, no, it's just this right here. Listen, watch this guy. Watch
Yeah.
the Korean guy. This is really funny. Watch him put it on, and when he does, he like tips the bottle. And this is really expensive, man. This tiny. Oh wait, we have to move forward. He did it first. This tiny bottle is worth. It's worth a lot of money, man. It's probably worth
How
a couple
much would-
$100. A very tiny amount of of the cologne.
Wow, wow.
And watch the Korea kid. What he does is he tips it over and spills some, and watch me jump when he does it. Like, yeah, it's very funny actually. It was really hilarious. I was like, oh my god, yeah.
You
That's what
don't
the guy.
That's money
Watch.
right there.
Yeah, right. Watch. Hang on, we'll see. Oh wait, hang on. What happened? We're getting. Oh, we missed it, man. Oh, right
Oh
there.
my
See
gosh, you
that?
freaked.
See me jump.
You would
It's so
not
funny.
have
I was like,
any.
oh my God. Dude, you just spilled like $50 worth of perfume. But it was all right. He actually didn't.
Is,
He only spilled a really tiny amount. It
no,
was very
you were about to kick him out of the class.
no, it was funny. He was cool. He was a cool kid. All right, man. So listen, Jeff, do we have a couple other questions from class yesterday that didn't from the stream that never made it up. So you want to cover, but you don't seem to have time to talk about. Oh man. I think that that's actually a really, really good question. I think the topics there are a lot of things that I would like to talk about, but I can't do it with students. Like I can't find a way to bring students into the conversation. It would just be me talking. And I don't have I just don't, I can't, so I don't do it because I can't find a way to include people. And sometimes I'll have it. So I don't have a specific topic, but I just know they're out there,
So what comes to when you're thinking about certain topics, what contents, I guess, like needs to be there in order for you to, if that might be a hard question to ask, but
no, it's a good question.
in order to feel like you can bring them up, like what
Yeah.
needs to be a part of the conversation or a part of the topic, I guess.
Yeah. There has to be a question that somebody else can answer. have some kind of answer to, like a realistic answer. You know, it's not just like, hey, what's your opinion about U.S. policy in Ukraine or something? It's like, hey, listen, man, no one. That's not. And even if I find a student who would have some thoughts about that, the class isn't going to, unless it's a really very, very unique situation, the class doesn't know anything about the conflict and what's going on. And so like that, so that means I got to spend, 10 or 15 minutes talking about it, like preparing people. And even if I do it a quick summary of 10 or 15 minutes, it won't land for people. And so, okay, well then, then what's the point of that? Right. So these kinds of topics that require, in order to really get a foothold into the topic, they require some kind of foundation. Those topics are off base, right?
Right.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so that foundation you're saying is like is experience. Like the students need some type of they need to be rooted in the top. They need to have a position, some rooted in experience somehow, but not opinion. You're saying,
like some foothold. Yeah. So like let's take the conflict in Ukraine, right? Well, it's most people, they hear it, half the people in the class, they hear that word, so they know there's something going on there, and it involves Russia, but they that's it. That's all they know. Just something. They've heard it, right? Then another of the other half, probably 90% of them, hear it and know that, it's a conflict and we're taking one side and Russia's taking another side and NATO's in there on our side. And like, we're trying to work this thing out, and that's all, but that's it. Right. So they know a little bit more. And then you have a small number of people in the class who are political science majors, or they're just, for whatever reason, they're from the region, they have ancestry and something, right, that they would be able to think through.
Expertise, like their own personal expertise.
Yeah. So therefore, what can I do with that? Have a conversation. Like, we're not educating people about the war. Like that's not what this class is. I don't educate people about things, because then nothing is going to stick. I could go through the whole history of Ukraine and the history of Russia's intervention in Ukraine and our conflict with Russia and the Soviet Union and one thing. I could spend a whole class on that. What's the purpose of that? No one will remember any of it. And even in the moment, it means nothing. It would be like me having people copy Chinese characters. Here, copies. I'm going to put them up on the overhead, and you're going to have this piece of paper, and I want you to really copy these out. Like, okay. So, and at the end of class, say like, okay, there it is. You have all your Chinese characters. Take them with you, right? Like, what's that? That would be that. So a lecture about the history of the conflict in Ukraine would be equivalent of having them copy Chinese characters. So that's why I don't teach like that. Nothing will stick, and that's just kind of how it rolls. And
right.
Get nothing stuck for me. When I have something that I'm kind of, I'm watching some kind of lecture about Promethean thought, let's say, and the person's like really laying it out, and then they're laying out Promethean thought, and I'm just like, this is kind of really interesting, and I'm following, and then I like doze off. I turn away my consciousness for 30 seconds, and I come back, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, wait, where am I? And I'm trying to catch up, and then I'm spinning my wheels, and then I finally, maybe I catch up and I start again, and then my mind wanders again, and it's just like, it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. It's the kind of thing you got to do on your own.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, would you say, are there facets that goes into like different factors that go into what you teach? Like one of them there needs to be like a experiential element for the students. Like they need to experience one another. Like they have to experience one another, and they have to experience the topic. They have to have some foothold into the topic. So if we talk about, hair, right? Or we talk about inequality. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about inequality. Next week, we we have a couple topics that people will have some kind of experience about, and maybe they've heard of it, but maybe they don't have a lot of experience, but they have some foothold into it. I keep using that term. And then after the class, they'll see it in places. What happens a lot, and they'll say, "Oh, okay, now I like, okay, that's where we're at," kind of thing, But
Right.
there's no way in which I have absolutely zero faith. The vast majority of people, the vast majority of the time, that learning information has value whatsoever. So I don't do it. All right, man. What? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I could keep going, but were you going to transition to something?
No. Yeah, I was just going to go to the next question from Jeff.
Yeah.
Unless you have a question
No,
about
I
that.
was just gonna, well, because you just said that your end goal, it just made me think about what your end goal is. Like by the end of the semester, what are you hoping that the students get? But just by the end, because you were saying by the end of the first class, if they feel like that they can go up to this student or this person on campus and ask them a question about something that they don't know, then you'll be happy. Is there an extension of that by the end of the semester, or is that just like maybe the whole goal over the course of the semester? Is like if they feel like they can, be curious and ask someone a question without it being taboo or without fear being there, I'll be happy with what I've achieved in over the semester.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a really good question. So be curious about things that are considered to be academic issues. Okay. What I think is really important that people know, especially parents, any parents who are watching this at all, the majority of young people, the majority of young people, the vast majority of young people are not in school because they want to be in school. They're in school because they're forced to go to school, okay, at a younger age. That's just sort of it, right? You're forced to go. A lot of kids who can't go around the world. We have like 50 million young people who don't go to school.
Wow.
Or maybe it's 200. I don't know. You can look it up really quickly. Someone can look it up, put it in the chat. But around the world, you have tens of millions, hundreds, and maybe it's 200 million. I don't know. Someone look that up, put it in the chat. And they want, and most of them really want to go, right? So, but most young people, they go to school because they're forced to go to school. And the way school is often designed is that it's really not very interesting. I mean, there are these alternative schools where people, really go into school, these methodologies, right? That are, the Montessori schools and places where school is just completely fused with creativity, having fun and creativity. Okay. Not rote memorization. And so like, that's a little bit different, but the vast majority of people, they wouldn't go. And so when you get to college, the vast majority of people who go to college, they go because they think they want to get a better job. They want to get educated and get a better job. Okay. Very few people are going to college because they think, you know what? And I'm saying this as someone who's been teaching for 40 years and having these conversations with people for 40 years. They're not thinking, you know what? Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to spend a lot of money, but I don't know. I just want to learn. I just want to develop my mind. I want to expand my mind. If you push people who want to go to get a better job, they'll say, oh yeah, I want to learn something too. But it is so secondary or tertiary to the process that it's just about getting jobs. Parents want their kids to go to school because they also want their kids to get a better job, or hopefully they'll get a better job because the parents don't want to have to take care of the kid forever, right? I mean, the parents won't say that. I mean, okay, hang on. There are two reasons, right? Parents, obviously, you want kind of what's best for your child and so on and so forth, right? But what is in the back of life, of the way of living, especially in a culture like the culture that we're in here in the West, where we have these nuclear families and kids are like, are moving out at a fairly young age and moving out on their own, and that's kind of to be expected, and it's normal, and that's like, well, in this kind of social system, this kind of culture, that means that if the child can't make it on their own, they can't get their own apartment, their own house, whatever, that means parents are gonna have to take care of them. In other societies where, these nuclear families are actually extended families, and people live in compounds or under one roof or in a very similar area. And again, in the US, that happens some places, mostly with immigrants and maybe in rural areas a little bit, where people maybe will have some space. But so, like parents, who want to take care of kids? So go to school, like whatever, be an engineer, make a lot of money, take care of yourself, because I want to retire and spend all my money on myself, kind of thing, right? I don't blame them at all. That's why I don't have kids. I never wanted to have to be responsible for them. Okay, so I'm answering your question in a really long way. I'm gonna finish up the question, right? Shit, I don't remember what the question was. Do you remember? What have I answered?
The question was, oh my gosh, it's funny because I had another question for you in connection to what you were saying.
No, it was about kids. No, you asked what I want by the end of the semester, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say the purpose by the end of the semester.
Yeah.
Yep.
So therefore, I know that most of the students in that room, the vast majority of them, are not in there to say, hey, I want to expand my consciousness, man. I am here to see it, how far I can push my mind, how much I can take in, so that I can have the most fascinating journey through this life that I can possibly have, be as open-minded, be as intellectually astute, and provoking in my ways of being in the world. Man, I want to be that person, the Renaissance woman or the Renaissance man, right? They're not like that. They are there because, they feel kind of forced to be there by culture or by hook or by crook or whatever. And so I need to give them a reason to like turn the switch on in the brain, like turn a little switch, like boom. Oh, wait, whoa, hang on. Oh, that was really interesting. They might not even say it consciously, like, oh, that was actually a really interesting conversation. But somewhere, but if it was an interesting conversation, it may be that a week later, if they possibly remember it even an hour later, but something will stick, something will resonate, and it will be there, and they'll remember it. And most people do. Like, students, they tell me these days, it will be 3 months later, they'll remember something that somebody in the front of the room said. Usually not me, but somebody else. Yeah. And so that's what I'm operating within that. Those are the constraints, or I should say the enablements of what's going on in Social 119. And so, we get heavy, we're going to get really heavy about certain things, but it's not going to seem that heavy because,
Mm-hmm. So like at the end, you're like hoping for some seed of inspiration, like trying to take them out of like the normalcy of how education is to them, like,
Yes.
the past 12 years of their life, like going through high school and like now college, just being fed this, like you said, like being roped into, this
roped into
test taking and no creativity at all, and you're just trying
I will say very limited creativity. Oftentimes in their art classes, maybe, but unless you go, there are certain schools you can go to where there's going to be more creativity than others, obviously, but very limited creativity. And I don't want to diss education, right? But the point is, that's what we've turned it into. I mean, here's the thing, right? You've got millions and millions of people vying for select spots, whether universities or jobs or whatever it is, but they're vying for these very select spots. The world, if I have a job or I have a position at school, or I'm offering a position, in my organization, I don't have enough time to interview more than a couple people. And so, but imagine, it's going to be like, well, who am I going to interview? Which two people am I going to pick out, or 3 or 5 or 10, right? Well, what you do is you start by, let's see who's got the qualifications. The qualifications. Most of what anybody learns, you learn on the job for most jobs. So it's just like, well, we just want to sort as quickly as possible, and then I'll just work it out. Like, so I get why we do school in the way that we do. It makes sense. It's like, all right.
Education is so fascinating. It's funny that we're talking about this right now, because I was actually talking to one of the students, one of the Wink facilitators, when we were just in pond in 104, just casually, shooting it. And one of the students is from Russia, and he was talking about how, which was really profound for me, the way that their education system is in Russia, and how you have to hit a percentile. So like it's like
Yeah.
freshman
Yeah.
year will be about like 10% of the cumulative is like 10% cumulative, right? Or
Yeah.
it's 10% of your entire career in high school. And then like your
Yeah. Yeah.
sophomore
Yeah.
year is 10% of your entire
Yeah.
career. And then your junior and senior year is like 70% of your entire career. And if you, let's say you're in the 70th percentile, then you're
Yeah.
only allowed to be like a teacher or like a
Yeah.
certain
Yeah. Yeah.
occupations.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, and what
So
that is,
it gets sorted out at a very listen, in most societies and most cultures, things get sorted out at a fairly early age. In the United States, we're much more open. So me, for example, I didn't do anything until I was 20. At the age of 20, that's when I said, "Oh man, okay, let me take this seriously." Well, I was way behind, and even then, it took me probably 5 years to learn how to write. 6 years, I would say. After about 6 years, I kind of learned how to write. The meaning
right.
that I could put a sentence together. I mean, I could write a paper and it would sounded pretty good.
Right.
Well,
Like truly like like you're, oh man, the sunlight, I'm so sorry. It's just
no, that's all right. Don't
following
worry
these
about it.
things.
No, don't
Um
worry about it. You look like it's like the Holy Ghost coming
yeah.
in and bathing you.
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
heaven. That's where I'm at.
So listen. So the idea
Um,
is that in another system like that, I would never have. I would have just been cut off, and I would have gone into a trade or something, right? Which would have been perfectly fine. But
mhm.
but that that's it's a different thing, right?
It just makes me think
Um,
about like how, go ahead.
no, no. Uh, Hey, I just want to go to the next question that we
Okay.
had.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Jeff, another one from class. Before Jeff takes off, how many students do you think have listened to? Oh, that's actually a really good question. I don't know. You know what? I'd like to ask that. My guess is not very many. If we
Mm.
go back, 30, I used to play Carlin pieces in class.
What
Uh,
what was
those
important
segments.
about what was important about George Carlin's comedy style for you?
He was very much a sociologist, man. Like a really, really insightful sociologist. He got very jaded toward the end of his life and was really, really negative and just like he was so jaded. Oh my God!
Yeah.
But he was very much a sociologist, and he would just have fun with ideas that were, comedians. They do contradictions, right? You look at one
Right.
thing, you look at another thing, and then you bring them together, and they fit together in some really weird way, and then you make a joke about that. Well, that's kind of what I do in class as a sociologist, right? That
Right.
I often leave off the joke because, again, I find that almost invariably people get offended by jokes in my particular class anymore. It didn't
The
used to be the
setting that you're
case.
in. Right.
Yeah, people are like, wait, this is a college classroom. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be like, oh my God, I get comedy and I get sociology together in a classroom at Penn State University or Rutgers or wherever else I taught, but that's less true
Interesting.
anymore. Okay, so
Wow.
anyway,
Mhm. Mhm.
Carlin, to answer Anelda, to answer the question, people used to really listen to Carlin, many more people, but not so much anymore. It's not a
It
thing.
has an
So very few
education.
people in the class. Yeah, just like he wasn't. He's a popular comedian among people of a certain age, but he died 12 or 15 years ago, and it just isn't. Yeah. Anyway,
Right.
that's that question. All right, Jeff, do you have another one? Do you think you'll have some new guests come to Social 19 that you met through the channel? Definitely. And Thiago, if you have any interest in being one of those guests, yeah, let us know. Like, what do you got? What do you got to bring? Yeah, I've talked to Eric Sell about coming on and even making a trip up to State College. And there are a lot of other people we meet through the channel. So it's really fun actually when
Cool.
people have something unique to bring to it. Somebody just reached out to me the other day about something who watches the channel, and I said, "Hey, send me your contact information because if I hit this topic, this particular topic that he was asking about. I said, I'd love to invite you on. So
they can bring another element of experience to the topic that
yeah,
you're talking about.
yeah. Mostly it's a lot easier on Wednesday office hours. Like I think we're going to have somebody on next week. But
Yep.
it's easier in office hours, but in the classroom, yeah, we bring people in. It's just, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more
It looks so powerful, when you have people on in the class.
yeah, it's
From
really
to,
good.
yeah. Yeah. And just when you have people come up and ask them questions, they could really get to, just really they just really get to experience, just by coming up, and say, hey, like, what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
Great.
Hey,
Asking.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. No. No, thanks for that. I just saw something in the chat.
Go ahead.
It does look powerful. The comment by Seth, Jeff, Dr. Smart here. Yeah. So Elijah, this is the thing, right? So it's like, if you don't have, here's the rational piece about degree requirements and like do you meet certain criteria, right? Well, it's really easy. If we're gonna we got this job available, you have to have a 3.7 GPA. Well, that's a very rational way to operate, because it's not that you're weeding out all the people lower than the 3.7, but you can't look at everybody anyway. Like, so if you don't get enough applicants, then you'll go from 3.7, you'll say, okay, you got to have at least a 3.5 or something, right? But you need a certain number you need a pool of applicants that makes a lot of sense. And then, doesn't matter it's going to matter whether you went to, Princeton or Yale or Penn State, or, like University of Toledo or some other like kind of second tier school. So that'll matter, right? But the idea is that at some level there are certain requirements that you got to hit. But when you waive all that, this is what Dr. Smart is saying. When you waive all that, and you have no basis upon which to sort of bring people in, or everything is up in the air. Just like, well, let's start bringing in like people that we know, right? Who are we going to hire besides somebody that we know? You know what I mean? Like, and this is why so many people hire interns. And the intern programs are really good, because you bring interns in, you're trying them out. That's what you're doing. You're like saying like, yeah, we're going to bring you in. And if we like you, well, why wouldn't we hire you? You spent a summer working for us. We know who you are. You showed up every day. You do what we asked you to do. What if we hire someone off the street? Like, we don't know. Like, we can do an interview for a couple hours, or 2 or 3 or 4 interviews, but that's not as good as having you work with us for 3 months in an internship, right? So in any case, that's an issue.
And with interns, like, you're still being weeded. People that are applying for internships are still being weeded out by certain requirements, right? Like, in order to be an intern, you have to meet certain requirements, right? Like,
yeah, you do.
GPA. Like, what do you? Because I know we're saying, what do you think that like GPA requirements tell about a person? Like, what do you think it says about someone?
Well, let me respond to your first thing about internships. So here's what I know from my students in internships. When I ask, about half the students who get internships somewhere where they knew somebody, some kind of place that was, they were asked, the business or the organization of somebody, right? That's a lot. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle right there. Yeah. So yeah, you got to have certain requirements, but you got to apply for the internship. And a lot of times it's like, hey, somebody who's, I'm working there, I hear about an internship, and I tell one of my students, or I tell my nephew or my neighbor or something like that, right? So that's a piece to it, which is like, okay, that's the world. It's nepotism, it's connections. Wait, okay, so that was the first thing. What was the second thing that you said?
Well, because for me, when I was at the career fair, I feel like I didn't usually have connections, like to get in. I didn't have any connections getting an internship. I just went straight to the career fair, and I had to use me to get somewhere. I had to interview for these places, and World in Conversation developed me as as a person to handle myself. And I
Yeah.
really felt like I could do that because of
Yeah.
World in Conversation, you
Yeah.
know? And, but like, I remember when I was when I was talking to one of the Oracle recruiters, right? The tech company. And, you know, he was like, you know what? He was like, he was like, I like you, you know, even though my GPA wasn't enough, you know, like
Yeah.
it's the requirement was a 3.2, and I didn't even have that at the time when I was a senior, you know, and
Uh-huh.
but I did have my roommate Taylor, who was who worked at Oracle, and I was able to get an interview through him. But when I interviewed for E&J Gallo, no connections at all. It was just interview after interview after, and then an executive. I had to present to 10 executives, right, in a room, and I just had to do my thing in order to
Yeah.
get the
Yeah. Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, no connections. I just had to do it. But like, I was curious from you, like, what does GPA tell you about a
Okay.
person? Like, what are the flaws in
Yeah.
GPA?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, what does it say? What do you think it says about
Okay. What
somebody?
I've seen.
You know?
First off, I want to say something. I can imagine you doing that presentation in front of those 10 people. And I imagine that you did very, very well because of your work with us at World in Conversation. And you're used to speaking publicly, and you're used to being on the spot. You're used to being on the spot, and
It was
you're good. Like, you're good in a group because you are in a group so often, you
it
know?
was
So
so honestly, I got feedback, and they were like, I don't have any feedback for you. They were like,
yeah,
you killed. I don't have any feedback. It looks like you could sell. That's what they said to me.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
remember being in the room before I had to go into that presentation, and there was people that had all these nerves, and I was trying to calm them. Like, we were in this skyscraper in Philadelphia, looking out into the city, you know. And
yeah,
I took one of the interviewees over, and I was like, "We're just in a building. We're like a bunch of dots in a building.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, just
yeah.
these other 10 people are like 10 dots in a building, you know." And just trying to like ease them and calm them a little bit. But yeah, that you were right. It was all World in Conversation. The way that they
Yeah, for
trained me,
sure.
it was
I know, man.
amazing. But
You know,
well, yeah,
that's
what
the
do you
thing.
think that
Okay,
GPA
GPA. Yeah, so here's
says
GPA
about?
for me.
Yeah,
So look, the most important, unless except for very, very unique job, there are two types of unique jobs for which GPA probably really doesn't matter. One is doesn't matter as much, right? One is when there's a certain technical skills are very much involved. Okay, accounting, certain parts of engineering, computer engineer. I mean, all sorts of more technical stuff. Okay, and mind you, the 2.0 student, uh, the 3.8 student is just going to be a better accountant on average than the 2.0 student. I mean, by far and away on average. I
how
mean, you know,
come?
like,
Like, how?
because because they have learned more, but they have taken in more information, right? The 2.0 student might be way better at doing all sorts. I mean, there are all sorts of things the 2.0 student or 2.2, let's say, that to do, but it's just on average what I've seen over the years after 40 years of giving those 2.2 students 2.5, giving them the opportunity to shine because I like their personality, right? But as often as not, more often than not, they don't come through, man. And that's the second piece of
2.2
this.
student doesn't come through. The
The
2.5 student.
2.2 or 2.5, whatever, they don't come through in the same
When
way.
you,
No, they
what does
don't.
that mean? Like, come through? Like, what do you
Yeah,
say?
I'll tell you. There's a piece of life that is part of life that is very much about showing up and showing up on time and being prepared. Okay. That's absolutely essential. Okay. Even if you're doing a job like something that requires such an immense amount of creativity, and like, you're an artist, right? And your job is to go out and play and work with this clay. And well, you still gotta, you don't just decide you're gonna work with the clay when you just wake up one day and feel like, I got to feel it. It's in my hands. I can feel it. I'm gonna be able to make this really complex pottery. It's like, look, man, you gotta be able to show up. And the higher the GPA, the on average, the more likely it is that people are showing up. and they're organized. They know when their exams are. They know when their homework assignments are due. They know how to do it. They don't wait till the last minute. They turn it in the way that the instructor wants them to turn it in. They're not making excuses for why it's late. Any number of things like that, right? They're showing up. Well, as an employer, you need people to show up, man. I asked you to do something. I need to make sure you can do it. No excuses. And so what students are learning in school, obviously, in college, and one of the most important things is how to show up, how to be responsible, and how to make things happen.
Right.
And so it's not. There are people with high GPAs who are just nervous wrecks that I can't even be around them. Man, I'm like, dude, listen, your 3.8 GPA is not worth all the nervousness you're bringing to it. I mean, please just like stop. Like you need to chill
Wow.
out.
That's
but
so profound.
Yeah, for sure. But
Differences.
they do show up and they're like, oh man, I got everything in order and so on. But I don't do well under stress. Well, I can't work alongside of you. Like I'd rather have the person who doesn't show up once in a while, but who works well under stress. I can't rely on them 100%, but I can rely on them 90%. I'm like, all right, I'll take that and not have to deal with your stress.
Yeah.
So, I think that's go ahead.
Go ahead. You think what?
I think that is a key piece of GPA that matters. But the difference between a 3.6, let me say like a 3.5 and a 4.0 GPA for the vast majority of careers really doesn't matter. And I'll take the 4.0 when it's somebody who, and I met many of them who never try, man. They just get a 4. They try, but they get a 4.0 and they have zero stress about them. It's really easy for them. They're not obsessed by getting a 4.0. They just happen to get a 4.0. I had a 4.0 student who I came to like quite well. They were in my class and they were graduating. This was back when I had office hours, and they used to come to my office hours a lot. And every time they come in, man, it was a woman. I just loved talking to her. She was so insightful and smart. I didn't know she had a 4.0 until kind of late in the semester. Okay.
She's probably a 2.2, Yeah.
Right. I thought she probably was. The way she was talking, I thought she was. But then I found out, no, she had a 4.0. Right. And I only found out after she graduated because she got an A- in my class. She never came to me and said, hey, I got an A- in your class. And if I had an A, I would have a 4.0. As it is, I have a 3.999 or whatever it is. I don't know. And she never came to me and said it. I found out. I happened to run into her somehow, I don't know, months later or maybe even a year later, and she told me that. And I said, you know what? That is worth the fact that you didn't come say anything to me. Right. I said, I cannot tell you how. I said, if you ever need someone to vouch for your character under any certain, whatever it is, if it's 20 years from now, you reach out to me. If I'm still alive, I got you, man. I got you. That was unbelievable. I've never had anything like that. And I thought, the way this person spoke with me, and the way she was very casual about things, I thought she was probably like a 2.5 student. I didn't think she took school seriously. I didn't think, whatever, So that is the best.
Yeah. Wow. What was that quality? Like, what did you, like, what rare quality were you seeing? Was it like
confidence, excitement, and curiosity, coupled with somebody who just had it. They just were able to do it. She just did it. It wasn't like she just had it. Yeah.
That sounds like a beast. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason she got an A- in my class, I forget why. I think she told me, if I remember correctly. She was working on her thesis. She had an honors thesis that she was writing. And the night before, she had to go into my exam. And my exams were really difficult back then.
Really?
Yeah, they were really hard. One time I had a class because of my exams. One time I had 240 students in my class. This is going back like 20 years. Mm-hmm. 240 students. I give out 7 A's and like 5 A minuses. That was it. That's how
Wait,
tough that class was. Yeah. So
that's
anyway, she
crazy.
was working on, she didn't have time to study for my exam because she was busy turning in her honors thesis. And like, she could have just called me and said like, hey, can I have an extension for a day? I would have said, yeah, whatever, you can have an extension. But she didn't.
Right.
Again, her marking to her character.
Wow.
So anyway,
Wow. And
that's
like,
that's
just
rare. That's
Mhm.
rare.
And the
Yeah.
no stress, you know, like the nerves, there were no nerves like you're talking about beforehand.
That's
like,
rare. Yeah.
You
That's
know?
rare. It's somebody who's 22 years old. Mind you, so the thing is, you know, school is, because we have emphasized these, you know, all these hoops that people have to jump through, like the qualifications and so on, right? Even more so, more than ever, GPAs matter. And so more than ever, well, they don't really matter to people doing the hiring. They really don't. I mean, we see through all that stuff, right? But people think that it does, and parents think that it does, and one thing after another. And people are spending so much money for their college education that it's almost like you just like have the sense that you're buying A's, man. You got to buy A's. You got to buy the grades. So, I mean, you know, I deserve this, right? I'm spending $50,000 to go to this university, or my child is, or whatever it is. It's like, well, of course you feel a certain sense of entitlement to that. And I'm working hard. Like, I legitimately work hard, and I'm doing my best, and I'm not making excuses. And I got to be in your class, and I work so hard, and I spent, you know, 50, not 50. So let's say $50,000. So like, and I spent $5,000 to be in your class, you know, for that tuition. It's like, man, of course people have that feeling about them. I understand that, but
Right.
you know, that's
Because like I have a question that I think you might find interesting that I want to ask you, but and also because for me, what I started to realize about grades, I always thought that, you know, it just shows, but like, and there's a fallacy in this. Like, I think I recognize that there's like a fallacy. I think I'm using that correctly, in that, like, you know, it shows how much at least for me, I assumed it, like, it showed how much I applied myself, like how much I studied. But then I think the fallacy in that is that you could, like you're saying, you could study as hard as you want to. You could study as hard, and you know, and to put the hours in, and really, but at this, you could just be a bad test taker, or you know,
well, that's the thing, right? So I have that a lot with students. So these exams that we have in class, for anyone who's interested, you can see the materials online. They're free and open to the public. They're not locked anywhere. You go to socializing.org and go to assignments and click on exams. They're not open for the first exam. They're not open yet, but they're, you know, they're videos, and they're readings, and they're not, you know, science journals and stuff. It's stuff that I see, you know, a lot of New York Times things, a lot of videos, short documentary kind of things that I come across, and I think, you know what? I just think this is really interesting and will expand someone's mind in some way. That's all. Very simple. And so we pick things out, and that
cool.
We change them all the time, and it's just so much fun. Like, I watch a video and I think, oh my God, the whole world should watch this video. Oh, I don't have the whole world, but I have my class, so these 800 students will watch it. So anyway, so what I do with that is what I want people to do is just read the article or watch the video. That's it. Just pay attention when you do. Don't let your mind wander. And mostly it's easy because the articles and things aren't very long, and you can watch it. You can do what you need to do without, you know, going off into dreamland, you know, or getting distracted. And then you just got to remember, you have to have a decent memory. And if you have a decent memory, the question is going to be something really, really, really simple, really so simple. It's like, I patterned the exam questions after the questions I had when I was in the second grade. We would read this little short thing in the second grade because we were learning how to read. And then you read it and you say, like, okay, and now here's your question. Sam answered this question, right? And, you know, Jack and Jill went up the hill to get some water, right? And And then the question is like, why did Jack and Jill go up the hill? To get what? Milk, Kool-Aid, cerveza or water? And the answer is water. And that's how my the exam questions are. And all I'm measuring is that you sat down and you watched the video or you read that article, and that's it. I don't try to assess critical thinking. I used to all the time. My questions were they were so fascinating, but I don't do that anymore because I just want people to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to guess because you'll have no idea, right? Well, I still have students who for whatever reason, they just must get distracted or they get really nervous, and I tell them, don't worry about it. This is not like this exam is like an exam you had when you were in 2nd and 3rd grade. So you don't have to be nervous about it. But they are, and then they're bad test takers or this or that. And then, okay, what do I do? Right? Because now here's the thing. You want to take it over again because I legitimately believe that you actually did pay attention when you watched and you want to give a second try to it. And in fact, I kind of want to give you a second try because I'm really curious. It's like, how could you fail? How could you miss half the questions on this exam? It's the easiest exam in the world.
How could you miss Jack and Jill getting water?
Exactly. Call it and say milk. I think I remember this. I think they went for milk. Like, dude, come on, man. So it's very simple. And then sometimes I'll let people retake it. I'm like, here's what I want you to do, man. I want you to go study it again, go read it again, watch the videos again. Don't be nervous. Don't do anything. And then I'm going to have you take it again. And I'm going to see how you do, right? Just out of deep curiosity, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, okay, so what do I do now, right? Because this person's going to have an employer, and the employer is going to assume that if I give you this thing to read, here, I want you to prepare this presentation or whatever, and can you read this piece and pick out the most important ideas and prepare the presentation? Well, what if you can't do that? Just like, you couldn't watch you couldn't watch this 15-minute video and remember even a single thing. Like why, how are you, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, I think your employer is going to want to know, they're going to look at this. You must have, maybe you have a comprehension thing, or I don't know, ADHD, something. So anyway, it's we get torn in that way, but the vast majority of people
like torn between like creating or what's the word, having harder boundaries. Like,
that's right.
To prepare them.
Yeah, because if you get an A in my class, you got an A in Social 19, right? So essentially, it's a class that if you want to get an A, and if you have again, we're talking about we have these 3 exams. There are other assignments, but these are the ones where people, don't have as much control over. You get an A in this, you gotta assume that you did something to get the A that had some value, right? And okay, that's cool. But I have a responsibility to, so for example, you have to come to class, and if you don't come to class, then you don't get those points. Okay, well, my responsibility then is I'm assessing your ability, your willingness, or to come to class every day, or your ability to. Yeah, it's late in the afternoon. So when I have morning classes, there'd be a lot of students who are dealing with depression, let's say, and it's like, oh, I can't get out of bed. And like, but my class, those students, they can show up for my class because that's just about the time that they're getting out of bed, And so this kind of thing, right? And I'm not making light of that. It's the reality. I mean, this is what we deal with here. So,
right.
So anyway, I'm torn. I get torn in that way.
Like torn between like the way it seems, because it sounds like to me like you want to create passion for learning, and you want to prioritize like passion for education and curiosity and compassion for people, and then at the same time like going against a system that's built to like for like hard structure, and like things need to be difficult, and things need to be and like is that
here
right?
Here let me this thanks for saying it that way, because you just brought something up to me. The fact is, right, anything that we do, any task, any job that we do, right, anything we do, even if you're homeless, right? Which I'm going to tell a story about. Any job that you do, you have to have the ability to reach a minimum, to show up, right? You have to have the ability. You have to have certain qualifications. I'm not qualifications.
Generally across the
You
board.
got to be able to
Just-
show up and do what's expected of you, even in a moderate way. Like you have to. I have people work for me who just can't come through. Like they can't. They even the very basic things that I need them to do, like they can't come through. And I think this is a headache for me. But I can let it slide because usually I'll just find a way around it. And this is not super high profile. Well, increasingly, I mean, it is. There's certain high profile to it, but it's like you can't. I can't. You can't have that. Like so,
Right.
every job, a person's got to show up, and we all know we work with those people who don't, and they don't come through. And everybody works with some people like that, unless you work by yourself. But everybody runs into them, right? And then they blame it on somebody else, and one thing after another. And so that's just I mean that's troubling. Look, even if you're homeless, man, you gotta it's not easy being homeless. Like obviously if you have a mental illness that goes along with it, then you're just surviving. But
Right.
Lori was just down in DC and she was really spending time in watching people who are homeless. And I've watched people who are homeless. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot to survive. You got to show up. And if you have any kind of shelter at all, you got to show up at the right time. You got to get a meal. You have to watch your things. You have to track your things. Where you're going to be at different times of the day. Where you're going to be when the weather hits certain degrees, or if there's rain. I mean, it is not easy.
Is your bed gonna be?
Yeah, you got to be on your game, and you got to be on your game. And so,
Right.
like, okay, that's why I made that quip about even being homeless. Doesn't matter who we are. You have to be able to do that.
You have to have, and it's like interesting because I thought it was really cool when you said like, oh, what about the student that has depression? You know what I mean? And how like your sense of compassion that you have, and I was thinking about how like our world like always it seems to me sometimes like our world always expects like resilience, like have to be resilient, and it's like we need resilient. I feel like there's an expectation for resilience more than there is an expectation for like compassion sometimes, or like, and sometimes we need to support the people that can't be resilient, or it's hard for them to be resilient, or.
Well, we reward resilience. I think
Right.
human beings across the planet reward resilience, which is why we have these stories in every single culture in which we elevate and put on a pedestal people who are able to overcome the greatest of odds and shine through. I mean, whether they're nursery rhymes or stories, every single culture has it. The gods who are the special gods, like the Hindu deities. I mean, there's certain gods who are the resilient gods, right? And they have a special place. And so it makes sense, right? Just because we all kind of have a sense of that. But we miss the resilience. We will see people who have been given, it would appear they've been given certain things, right? They got when they were 18 years old, they got a credit card from their parents, and they had a car, and they had this and they had that. But they also can have an incredible amount of resilience. And it's just, we have to measure it in a different way. And so, yeah, I would say I see with students. I mean, I have students who I'm rooting for, man. Over the years, I root for them, and I'll give them a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance. And then, I've had enough of them that me giving them second chances actually, and third and fourth chances, actually strung them along. And they really needed to not. They needed to not have that. And I have one. It all broke for me one time, probably about 15 years ago. I had a student. He was an immigrant student, and man, he was really struggling to pay for school and to make it work, and he had, his family back home, and they were relatively new immigrants, and I wouldn't even say what they were. He was from Southeast Asia, and he he needed to stay in school because he was the only one in his family who just had any chance of going to college, and his parents really wanted him, but he was struggling, but and so I helped him out. I helped him with a grade in the end. Hey, and as soon as I'm done saying this, I want to take another question. I want to take something from the stream. Actually, I want to hear from
I had this one question for you that I wanted to.
All right, hang on. All right, no, go ahead. I'll say that. So what happened was I hooked him up, right? I got him. I gave him an independent study, and it was enough. It was at the end of the semester, right? And it was enough. It's like, hey, you got to read these books and do whatever. And you don't have to read them right now. You can read them after the semester's over, and I'll go back and I'll change your grade, kind of thing, right? And so he did. He did that, and he stayed in school for another year. So he took more loans out because he had some grants, but he had loans, and he did. And then in the end, the next year, this was like now his third year, nothing. It all fell apart. And so then instead of having 2 years of loans to pay back, he had 3 years of loans to pay back. And he's probably still paying those loans back to this day, when he never went back to school. He ultimately dropped out, and it's fine. He got a job as an auto mechanic and was learning automobiles. And you can make a lot of money as an auto mechanic because people don't want to do it. But he had these loans to pay off. And because of me, he had an additional, $25,000 to pay. And I think I shouldn't have done that. Like, I never should have done that. That was just a really bad idea. And after that, it changed for me, that I just started to say, now some people need
the boundary, need the discipline.
Just
right. Yeah. It's, man, I feel
and
that.
I used him because he was part of what he was dealing with was depression. And the pressure of having to be this person in his family.
For your family, like the only one.
It was hard, man. Yeah.
I guess we can ponder that. Maybe you want ponder this, and you don't have to answer it. I just want to get it. Oh, maybe you don't have to answer. We can move on to the chat question. But I guess this is earlier on. It was making me wonder, how do you think culture, how we were talking about before, interdependent cultures and then independent cultures, right? Like us as the Western world is more of an independent culture. How we'll send our kids out at 18 and they get an apartment, or the elderly will put them in a home, the independent cultures, and then the interdependent cultures where family stays a core, and they're more supportive and they're more interconnected. It's just making me wonder, how do you think the differences between those culture affects how students are able to navigate through the system, as in show up and do it, how you were talking.
Okay, I have one particular example, just what we're talking about here. I'll tell you one ways in which the interdependent cultures fail students, because people, when they don't have money, when they're struggling to pay for school, and they're very much they don't have they don't come from a lot of money, and they don't have a lot of financial support and so on, or social support. And they are, and then they get called upon to support other people in their cultures, right, in their families and so on, their communities. That's a huge. I've seen so many people just in the end drop out. They struggle and they drop out. They can't do it because they got to go back home. They're spending all this time worrying about other people. The family calls upon them oftentimes. People who don't come from a family of college graduates don't really understand. They think college is like high school. So I send my child off from, Philly or DC or Jersey or whatever, especially if it's out of state, it's even more problematic. Baltimore, Maryland, let's say you're paying out of state tuition. I send my kid off there. I just think school's like, high school, you just go through, you show up every day, you go through the hoops, very minimal amount of homework. If you don't want to do it, you can still graduate. And people think because they don't have any experience with the university, they think that's what universities are like. and then it is miserable. And I've had so many conversations with students where I have to say, listen, man, it's either you or it's your family. It's one or the other. And, your family is really important. So let's talk about why that is. And, but you can't do both. You're not going to be able to do both. Like you can't be here. You're either going to have to, and sometimes, you're going to have to cut your family off and be a student. They can't rely on you. They rely on you for X, Y, and Z things. And which is fine. I understand that, but it's like, look, to your parents relying on you to watch your little brother who's now getting into trouble in high school, right? I'm like, look, that's like you could do that, but you're going to fail out of Penn State. So that's very clear, right? So these very difficult conversations with students that when you get into it, you realize it's very.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very difficult, man. My God, it's one of the reasons I don't have kids. Like I don't want to do that. It's easier to do with other people's kids, but even then,
Right.
it's hard, man. Yeah, I've had so many people that I've counseled that they really just need to stop. Like it's not. And I'm the guy, and they're now out there. 10 years later, they're out there saying, "I had a professor at Penn State who told me to drop out of school." That's their story. And I'm like, dude, tell them the other part of the story. You know what I mean? Tell them the whole story.
Right.
I told you to drop out.
They're finding those clips again and distorting.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. This is the thing. Whenever I hear stories, of people tell me about somebody at work or their neighbor or this or that, whatever it is, but it's something that somebody said or did that was really outlandish. I start doing a review of all of things that I have said to people that they could think that anybody would think is really outlandish, but actually it was not at all,
because the context,
the context, it so matters. Like I told one kid, like, dude, you absolutely need to drop out. Look, here's what it is. This guy, he was a student. He literally, so Eric Sell asked this question a little bit. What is intellect and how is it accurately measured or assessed, right? Mm. I don't know how to answer that question. Okay. But I know when I don't see it. I'm not going to try to answer this. It's beyond my pay grade. It's not what I do. Not my pay grade. It's just beyond what I do, right? But I have had a few students over the years, probably had more that they get lost in the shuffle, but I've had some that I know that I absolutely, there's no way they should be in college. I don't know how they got in, what happened, how they got here, just nothing. There's just no way. There's no way they should be here. They could not put two thoughts together in a very simple way, right? So I had this one student and I sat down with him and I said, listen, I'm looking at I really worked with him. I gave him all sorts of tests and exams and just very simple things to just say, like, hey, just try to assess for myself. Not going to send him off to some testing center. I'm going to do it for myself, right? Can you read this thing here? And I'm going to give you a question and I'm going to see if you can answer the question, right? Couldn't answer this. And I'm talking like the second and third grade question, that level of question. Maybe a little harder, but not much harder. Right. So, me telling this young man, listen, you need to stop, and he had all sorts of loans and stuff. I'm like, this is not for you. Right. Really. And then walked him through. It's like, you're not you're a bad person. It's that you're not dumb. You're not this, you're not that, but you're just not here. Your mind doesn't work in this way. What do you love to do? And he had other things that he loved to do. I'm like, that's where your mind is. And go follow that. You don't have to be here. I'm just telling you to be here. Like, stop with this nonsense, right? And me as a person who painted houses for 7 years and who I would be very happy if I was a house painter today. I mean, I get into this meditative state painting and I love it. And I would make more money than I make today. And so, whatever it is, right? But I wouldn't have known. I would have no idea that I could have lived this other life as a professor. I would have just lived my life as a house painter. It would have been fine. I had a very, very adaptable, very calm, very, very enjoyable consciousness when I painted houses. It was fine. I felt elevated. I felt good about myself. I felt like it was all fine. So, you know, that's the intellect thing. That would be like this guy right here. Yeah.
Keep this house well. And I'm going to gain some mindfulness.
Yeah, gain some mindfulness.
Yeah.
Well, when I said to this young man, I said, listen, you know what you got? You came up here for 2 years. You gave it your best. You learned to live on your own. You know, you're working 2 jobs to try to make, there are all sorts of things that you got out of this. You met some people who were really cool. I wasn't one of them, but you know, he met people, he had some friends. I'm like, this is an awesome experience. You are not a failure. You learned something. You learned that this isn't the path for you. So go follow the other path.
Right.
Now, as far as I know, he never tried to go back to school, and I'm sure he never did because he wouldn't have. It just wasn't going to work, right? So
Yep.
anyway,
And that had to be so,
that's it.
just thinking about you, I'm thinking about you in that moment as an educator, man, that had to be so tough to have that conversation. You know, or
Yeah.
maybe it isn't, but like it,
Well,
maybe
it's
you,
hard because look, who am I to say that to somebody else, right? Like, who am I? Like, I don't, it's not, I don't have, do I have a right to do that? I mean, I'm like, but for me, I felt like I really, when I have students in those ways, I feel like it's my responsibility to step up,
right,
but maybe I'm wrong. And that's the difficult thing, you know, it's easier. It's hard, and it would be the same being a parent, you know, you're trying to like, maybe I was too hard on my daughter when she was 15 and going through that phase. And you know, it's hindsight is really good. Like I remember when we had our dog and we were training our dog and we were training him to be a service dog, and he was very independent. Man. He was a Portuguese water dog with a very lively and independent personality. And this dog was very smart. He knew exactly what we wanted him to do, but he wanted to do what he wanted to do.
like,
So
nah.
we tried to break him. And later we realized that we felt so bad that we really tried to break him between like the ages of like, you know, 9 months and 2 years, right? We just tried to just heal next to me. Like we could heal. We would go in a city. He wouldn't heal next to me unless we were in a big city, and then we'd take him off leash and he'd be right there. Like
Oh,
he
wow.
just was not, he wouldn't run in the street. I mean, there was nothing like, but damn it, he did it when he needed to. And the only reason he did it then in a busy city with cars all around is because he didn't know what was expected. He didn't know what was expected. And so he had to do it. And I remember later though, and even to this day, Lori and I, we feel so bad that we were so hard on him when it's like, that wasn't his personality. We didn't read his personality and we didn't know he was going to be okay. He'd be fine. He was going to be a great dog, and he was a great dog. But we just didn't have the experience. And so
Was this before or after that student experience?
that was probably before. Yeah.
Before.
With the dog, but it was afterwards, you know, kind of looking back around the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of experiences like that with students.
Right.
You know, all sorts. I'm right now that I have to say no to a couple people, you know, working with us or whatever. And I don't, you know, it's like, hey, listen, man, it's not meant to be right now. So
yeah,
it's hard.
and then I'm sure there's been moments where you were like, you need to do this, or like in the opposite way though, like you need to stay here and like get your stuff together. I'm not sure if you've ever had those, but
yeah, no, I've had those also. Yeah. Hey, Chom Nomsky. We actually, this was before the Obamas got their 2 Portuguese water dogs, man. And we had the idea that they were following us, that they heard about us. In fact, Roshi, his name was Roshi. He was
cool.
not many people had Portuguese water dogs at all at the time, and
I don't even know
cost a lot of money.
Like. What do they look like?
I
don't know if
Jeff maybe Jeff will pull one up, but they you know what they look like? They look like golden doodles or Labrador doodles, like? Curly hair, like really, really cute, really soft curly hair, just really, really cute dogs. And yeah, you can Google it, dude. You can Google one, but we didn't clip them in the way that a lot of people clip these dogs, you know, like poodles and stuff. But in any case, Yeah, we always had this idea that the Obamas copied us, but
I
Roshi
think-
was. We put him online. He had his own webpage. So he would bring him to class, and he was Lori's a service dog for Lori, who was a seizure response dog because Lori has epilepsy, right? And at that point in time, she was at the kind of in the end stages of having seizures, and he was trained to, if she had a seizure, just to be with her, like he had good information when she was alone, So in any case, but he was in a Japanese publication. They did a whole spread on him because he was such a cool dog. He was in this Brazilian publication. Yeah, there's Roshi right there, man.
Aw.
Look at that. Is that a cool dog?
Wow. Wow, they're smart dogs.
Yeah, that was in the offices at Penn. Yeah, really, really smart dogs. Yeah.
Wow.
He used to come to class, and but he didn't really like people. He didn't dislike people, but he just wasn't really drawn to people. Like he didn't.
He
need to
wasn't
be
a social
petted.
guy.
No, unless you had something. So he would go into Thomas, and imagine he would get up eventually. He would know that I wasn't looking because he'd have to lay down in the front, and he would get up and he'd walk through the seats, and he was just looking for food, and I would never know. And then I'd suddenly see people, he'd be going by a whole row of people, and people would be looking down and going like, whoa. Because Roshi would be crossing her.
He's like, "You got any food?
Dude, you got any food?" That's all he cared about. And I would tell people, because sometimes people would be afraid of dogs. I'd say, "Listen, if you don't have any food, he's gonna keep walking. So don't worry about it. He doesn't. If you're afraid of dogs, trust me. This dog doesn't give a damn about you. He wouldn't even bother to growl at you or anything. Nothing. And he was they're hypoallergenic, so you're not, if you're allergic to dogs, don't worry about it.
That's cool. Yeah, he's looking.
Yeah,
to
that was him as a puppy, man. We used to call him Devil Dog.
Wait, was he mischievous back?
Oh my God, these dogs, they're very mouthy, and they're always got something in their mouth. They're always like, yeah. But really awesome dogs. It was a great dog. He traveled all over the world. We took him to Spain with us, and he lived there with us. And I think he hated us after that because we lived right on the Mediterranean with him. And he was back. He's just very close to Portugal, actually. And he swam every single day. And then we pulled him out and we left. And I think after that, he just hated us.
Wait, because that's like, is that the origin of that?
Southern, the Algarve region of Portugal. Yeah. They used them as on boats. Fishermen used them as fishermen and fisherwomen, but people fishing, they would use them. Oh, there he is on the beach. Yeah. Oh, that was actually the Jersey shore of it.
Right. That's so
yeah, he was a cool dog. Wow. And then it was so painful for him to go that we just never could do another dog. Plus, we travel all the time, and it's just like so we haven't gotten another dog.
How many years? How old was he?
Almost 16. He almost got 16 years. Yeah. Yeah, really fun. Yeah. All right, listen, I think we can cut out now. Hey, but listen, we do want to take, we do want to have so we'll be in class tomorrow, 4:30. We start up the stream at 4:30 Eastern time, and we will, I think we have we'll have a good class tomorrow. Next week we have a really cool class. All right.
I'm excited for it. Any sneak peek about it?
Can leave higher than
what can leave it? Anything. Tall buildings.
Dude, that's all right. I like that. Hey, I told DJs, my Angelica, who's 5 years old. She's my goddaughter. I told her a dad joke the other day, and she completely dissed me. She like rolled her eyes at me.
That face is so funny, yo. She's like,
yeah,
she just makes the face. That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
All right, so tomorrow, I think we're gonna do inequality, but next week we're gonna something really cool next week.
Let's go.
Yeah,
it'll be a great class. Oh yeah.
Now, hey, and anybody on the stream, if you have any ideas for classes, things that you think would be really good, and things that students can talk about, that's really important. It's like the students have to be able to engage. Okay, as Elijah and I were saying earlier in this conversation, if you have something, really let us know, man. I'm really
there we go. That email at the bottom that Jeff just posted. Sam
Yeah.
at social19.org. That's where they
Yeah.
can send it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, because at some point I'm gonna run out of ideas, right? It's been I don't know how many years. So I got yeah.
Outsource now.
Yeah, I gotta outsource. Yeah. And then if you want to come and do the class for me, that's even better. So
Right.
know.
You'll be in the stands.
Yeah, you just gotta just no dad jokes.
You'll be a participant. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, listen. Thanks everybody. We'll head out. Yeah. Be well.
Sweet. Great talk.